for joining for our session. We are very excited to talk about virtual student recruitment. So the title of the session is Am I Muted? Which I know is a phrase we all have said probably once a day in the last year and a half with our tips for standing out in virtual recruitment. Just let's give a quick introduction. So my name is Kate Lotz. I'm the Associate Director of Communications at KIC UnivAssist, and I will let the panelists introduce themselves as well.
Hey everybody, my name is Amber Longtin. I'm a Senior Admissions Counselor at Michigan State University.
Hello everyone, my name is Sofia Sanchez. I am a Transfer Coordinator at Florida International University located in Miami, Florida.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Kristoffer Toribio. I proudly represent Orange Coast College, a two-year community college in Costa Mesa, California. I'm also the president-elect of the International Association for College Admissions Counseling. Thank you for joining us.
Great. So we, instead of a sort of regular presentation with lots of slides and bullet points, we opted to instead have this be more of a panel discussion. So hopefully you all will find that valuable. A couple of housekeeping items first. We will leave the last 15 minutes of the session for questions, hopefully 15 minutes. If you're in the virtual audience, please, you can raise your hand during that question time and I will invite you to come on and ask your question. You can also type your questions in the chat and we'll keep an eye on that. If you do want to ask your question verbally, then the videography team will spotlight you if you want to ask your question either in person or on the Zoom. So Chris, I think we can move to the next slide if you don't mind. Thank you so much. So just by way of overview of sort of why we're talking about virtual student recruitment in the first place, UnivAssist did a survey of about 1,500 high school students worldwide, so this is non-US students, to learn a little bit more about what students are really looking for. We know that they're inundated with the virtual fairs and virtual opportunities to find the right college. So some of these things are the things that kind of floated to the top in the survey. One is that they're really looking for convenience, their own convenience. They want to be able to explore multiple universities in one place. And that's indicated through their preference for multi-university events versus single university events. A lot more students are going to a lot more events where they can meet different institutions at one go. Some of the top factors that draw them to virtual events include scholarships, program choices available, the rankings of the universities that are going to be there, and a diverse group of universities from multiple countries. Another thing that they really seem to appreciate is a personalized experience. So again, they, just like us, really miss that in-person interaction. And it's not the same, to exchange emails with somebody or to just go to the website to get your information. They really want to have an active exchange with you in real time, the same way that they did when you were in person at a college fair, in person visiting their high school. They want to have a genuine conversation with a real person. They don't want to speak to a chatbot or, anything like that. And they want to get their own individual questions answered. So they don't want to just be sent emails and fact sheets and, speak to somebody on like text chat. They really want to have a real interaction. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And they also want to be able to choose how they interact, right? They want to be able to choose, oh, I want to go on video, or I want to go on audio, or I want to just interact through social channels, or I want to have a live chat. In terms of the survey, we found that most students, and that was 39%, actually prefer the option of having the university person on video with them on the chat, so they don't have to show their face and they don't have to speak, but they want to see your face and hear you speak. 36% prefer both the student and the university to be on audio and video so they can have that face-to-face conversation. And 24% preferred the chat only for both. So that was definitely a lower percentage. They also want to spend less time at a virtual event. We have these long virtual events for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Most students want to spend less than an hour there. That was 77% wanted to spend less than an hour at a virtual event. And their preference dramatically drops for events over 2 hours. Only 4% of students said that they plan to spend more than 2 hours at a virtual event. They still want to receive your electronic materials. Also, they want to receive your brochures and your fact sheets in local languages for parents in regions where that's appropriate. So just because it's virtual, don't think that they don't still want to have your materials. They don't want any more lengthy presentations. They want to come and meet with you and get something that they can't get from your website. You know, they don't want any sort of long PowerPoint or walk through a brochure or anything like that. And, you know, finally, one of the most important things I think that we have found that's valuable for interacting with students is if you, as a university representative, can treat virtual student recruitment with that same level of professionalism and preparation that you did with in-person recruiting. So by that, you know, I mean, show up, dress up, you know, make sure you've had your coffee, make sure that you have yourself together. They really, it makes a difference. Your enthusiasm really makes a difference coming through the screen. And now if we can move to the poll question, I'm going to have Arti share that link with you all. So if we can do a quick poll, if you guys can go to that Menti link that I think Arti is going to share and type in the code. We'll give everybody just a minute to do that. But the question is, how are you as an audience feeling about virtual recruitment events at this time? You know, the options are drained and dreading, or meh, I've gotten used to them, or each one is a unique and wonderful adventure. Can't wait to do more. You know, it's something that you really love. So if we can get some kind of a sense of how you guys are feeling about that, I don't know how long we're going to give RT.
Are you able to see it on your screen?
No, it's not. Chris, can we have you stop sharing for just a second, maybe?
Yeah, that'll be great.
If you guys can spotlight that one, the Jahangir session room, then the virtual people can see it. It's still not spotlighted. It's still pretty small.
I think we need to give the code as well.
Can you see it now?
It's still small.
Could we read the code out loud, maybe, so we can type it in the chat?
Yeah. So
yes. So I'll tell you the code. It is 822-76187. I'm gonna type it in the chat.
Thank you.
Great. All right, we are getting some results.
I'm very curious to see. I don't know what my prediction is for everyone.
Predict it's early in the morning and people haven't gotten through their day yet, and so we might be feeling more optimistic.
Well, it depends. It depends on where people are.
True.
At the end of the day in India, so maybe people are just looking forward to dinner, you know, they're tired of sitting through conference sessions.
It looks like maybe. I'm also loving the bubbles flying over as everybody enters their results.
Cool. I think, should we consider it done-ish? Okay, so it's interesting. It looks like most people feel kind of mediocre about virtual events at this point, and the second biggest group are really, really tired of them. So hopefully we'll be able to change your mind in this session and give you some helpful tips. So now I want to kick off the panel. Chris, if you want to share your slides again. As the first question, kind of just for the panelists, I want to ask, how do you guys feel about that poll question? You know, where do you range in that drained and dreading, meh, and can't wait to do more?
I'll go ahead. I think it's never just one, right? But for the sake of answering, it's very easy to truthfully be at meh, you know, like just exhausted, because in reality, when you do virtual events, successfully, I have found, is that it is beforehand and after the event, also within, right? During the time, you have to, like we mentioned, have your camera on, be excited, be as professional and presentable as you would be in person. But to be able to do that and to be able to capture presence, there is legwork that needs to be done prior and afterwards. And so it's not just attending a virtual event that usually wouldn't meet our hours, joining one at 1 a.m., right? I know Chris is joining probably at 4 a.m. for him right now. And typically that wouldn't happen in person, but it's the legwork that we have to do to catch and capture the presence of students that we want to engage with. So, for example, I've heard from colleagues of mine that there's different types of virtual recruitment events, but we'll use KIC as an example in the Webby fairs. It is of high demand, such high demand. So many students are interested in attending, and there are so many university and colleges present as well. So in what can be a saturated market at that moment, how do you stand out? And I've had colleagues tell me, I wish I had a few more attendees in my booth. What can I do to, prepare for the next one? And it's that extra effort you have to put in advance in trying to make yourself presentable in different ways, which I'm sure we're going to expand on. So I'll let the other ones speak and give their 2 cents.
Yeah, Chris, Amber, thumbs up, thumbs down. How are you feeling?
I think I accepted the situation and the circumstances that we're in right now. So even if, travel was to open up, I don't think a lot of schools and events are happening anyways. I think for me at OCC, because I'm in an open enrollment institution, virtual recruitment has actually really benefited us in a way that, we were able to outreach the most underserved students that really needed our information. Just to put in perspective, I've been in this field for about 12 years, visited about 54 countries to recruit students, but that took me 12 years to do. I was able to reach out to like 70 countries within a year. So I see the silver lining in it. Now, I feel a little bit meh because, this is a lifestyle. It's just a complete dramatic change of our ways of doing things. And, we do miss being on the road, being with our colleagues, speaking to students in person, and of course, the excitement of travel. But in a sense that, really all I can do right now is just to stay as positive as possible and really just utilize this really as an opportunity instead of a hindrance.
I'm gonna be an outlier. I'm gonna say I just had some coffee. I had some really good breakfast and I'm feeling it right now. So I'm excited, but kind of like Andy said in the chat, sometimes it really changes. And check on me here in about 4 hours. I have a fair training that I'm doing with KIC. After I do the training, after I get in the platform, I may see my list of things to do to prep for this one fair and think about the others and feel more meh than I did before. I think something that helps is being able to talk to people about it. And so I'm really excited to get to do this panel to talk and share more. And so maybe that coffee buzz that I have will rub off on some of you.
And for those of you that know Amber, this is classic Amber. I feel like Amber always has a coffee buzz, which is great. So now we're going to move through a series of questions that I have for the panelists that hopefully will, again, give the audience a little more insight into how you guys are choosing your virtual events and sort of how you are making them successful for you. So we can kind of move through these, maybe give like a minute answer each. What is your strategy in choosing virtual events? Because there are so many to choose from, so many different organizations, so many different groups of colleges, or maybe you're doing them on your own. So how do you decide which ones are most valuable?
I'll go ahead and start. I think the answer is going to be a little different for each university, and it might even be different within different markets. And so a fair that works for you one place might not work for you at all in another place. And so you have to sit down and you have to think about what's my budget for the year and how am I going to spread it out the various places? How much money do I want to invest which place? You have to think about names. Is it important for me to collect those and get that data from fairs, or is that something that's not necessary and I'm looking for something else? What are we going to do if we take them? And so for us, we do want names. That's something that our leadership wants to see in our system to know we've been working and active. And so that's definitely a factor. And I think another thing that's been very helpful for me and my team is talking to colleagues to say, okay, have you worked with this group before? What was your experience on that platform? Because while it'll change a little bit for each of our universities, typically the feedback that we get has been very valuable in helping us make that decision. And I would also say it's important to have some variety. It's great if you find a fair platform that works for you, but keep in mind different students go to different events and counselors might promote different things, different places. And so you're going to want to make sure that if you have the budget, you're at a variety of places to catch that broader audience.
Yeah, I think, just for me, I have to put into context that I'm a very small, recruitment operation of one person, which is myself, but also a very high impact international student population that we serve. So to be perfectly honest, I'm still trying to figure it out. And I think that's okay for me to admit. What is my strategy in choosing virtual events? Our office has also been impacted by budget. So really the only strategy that I can think of is that, or two things actually. One is to go with institutions and organizations that I'm most familiar with. So KIC is a really good example. Education USA is an example as an American institution. But I also have to really rally around my colleagues as well too. So one of the things that I've done is join a small group of recruiters or universities to recruit together. So it's six of us. We call ourselves the G6. So we've been together since the very beginning of the pandemic. And we're still continuing to recruit together as well. And we do share leads. We do follow-up events when we do virtual events as well. So we make a really cognizant effort that we're recruiting together in any virtual events that we do. So that's how I choose them. And it's been working. So, we've been doing recruitment events at least, I think, once a week. So if you put it in perspective, there's 52 weeks a year, at least 50 to 52 events that we've done together. And it's just been really helpful just because my operations is somewhat small. And also, being an institution that's not very well known, I have to kind of just go right now with those that I'm most familiar with.
I will add on to Chris's point in a recognition. So initially what FIU did was any organizations or any events that were, in person, like he mentioned, Education USA, KIC, that we have worked with before, whenever they had a virtual option, we attended. And it's always worked for us since the beginning, so we continue to engage in that partnership. I have to add as well that during this time, university representatives and high school counselor relationships are more important than ever. We need to consistently engage with each other, and I found that to be the most successful is when I can attract those students who are already having an interest, and then being able to, in small group or just an FIU session where I get to discuss something that isn't particularly to FIU, something that may be engaging for those students so that they can see FIU as a brand that is reliable, that is resourceful, that has more information than just the institution, whether it's essay writing or what do I talk about when I've been my senior year or my final year of high school in a pandemic, or any tidbits of information to help them. So the one-on-one counselor to university rep relations really helped me and allowed for Zoom meetings or virtual calls, anything like this. And it was extra effort, but it was intentional. So my ROI was very high.
Great. And I'm sorry, panelists, I'm going to have to slap your wrist a little bit here. We don't need to talk about UnivAssist. This is not about UnivAssist, so thank you for mentioning that as an example. But just in general, we really want to talk about kind of what is, and and these are some great questions in the chat already. We're finding that people are asking, how can you really get students engaged? How do we know that they're engaged through the screen? What can you do? So this, that actually goes very well into the next question, which is how do you prepare for different virtual events? What are some of the things that you can do to make sure that they're successful?
Well, one thing I've been doing to really prepare is just making sure that I have the language materials that I need for market. I think that's really important to kind of just stand out in a sea of other institutions. I've been giving away free Duolingo coupon codes, so I found that really, really helpful to do. So if you are an institution that does accept Duolingo, I do highly recommend that you go ahead and reach out to your representative. They're also looking for data as well too. So I found that incredibly helpful in preparing and also standing out, making sure that all my materials are well designed. Things are still because things are virtual, things need to be visual. So I make a really cognizant effort that the design of all the materials and everything that we do, it's like putting on a really nice outfit, like that's your best foot forward virtually. Yeah, so that's kind of the small things I would do to prepare.
I will go ahead and mention that we once thought that working in person and doing recruitment events in person was very saturated, but it was truly a finite landscape. And now we live in this infinite virtual landscape where there's tons of different virtual events. Some are smaller than others, some are worldwide. So the best way to prepare is any points of contact that you have pertaining to the event. Try to see if you can, narrow down who the audience is. And then I've traced back to our data at FIU. Okay, so based off of this audience and the similar audience we've had in the past, whether it's a certain country, let's say, what interests have they had before? So now I have topics of what I can discuss. And to Chris's point, we know that they're going to ask for scholarships, application process, and it can be very blurry in comparison to the other institutions they're speaking with. It could be very confusing, and it could be, in a way, hard to navigate. So having something for them concrete that they can fall back on is important, and something they can listen to at the same time in an engaging way. And I found that to be experiences. So being able to talk about student experiences instead of just step 1, apply, step 2, this, when that already exists somewhere that they can read and turn back to. The actual conversations and keeping them in my booth, my virtual booth that is, are the experiences that I describe to them so they can see themselves at FIU. And that will depend on, are they a business major? What are our business majors doing? They're going to New York on a trip for their class because they're in finance and they're meeting with the offices and executives of JP Morgan. And then they can, oh, wow, I see myself doing that. So describing those experiences is what I think keeps them captivated. But learning about those experiences that your institution offers or what the students are going through is helpful to know and then to provide in the session itself.
I think that my note actually, and it kind of can tie into the next one to some extent, is 2 parts. One, it's important to keep in mind that while many of us doing this work didn't grow up in like the world of streaming and digital content constantly, students do and are. And so when I'm thinking about how should I be interacting with students, it's something like an event. I think instead of thinking about, well, how did I present in the past? For me, it's been really helpful to think, okay, students watch streamers. Like, I don't totally get it, to be honest. I'm not watching streamers, but they do. And how do streamers get people to stay on their channel? They're very interactive. They have variation. They pull in the students in ways when they can, or the people watching when they can. It's a very different skill set. And I think someone pointed out in the chat, I'm not a monkey to watch dance. But actually, you kind of are when you're at a virtual fair. It's unfortunate. I'm not going to say I like being a dancing monkey, not where I saw my career going. However, if you want to keep students engaged, you have to kind of meet them where they are. And where they are is they're taking digital content all the time. And if you are not grabbing their attention, they don't feel like they need to be there and they will leave. And that's fine. There are other ways to connect and get that. And so I think that as we're looking and preparing for like, how do I interact with students on these platforms? Watching streamers and going out and seeing, okay, talk to some of your students, see who they're watching, and kind of seeing how they interact can be a great starting point. Also, don't think that it has to be admissions alone doing this. One of the best parts about being virtual, and this ties into the next question very nicely, is you can bring other people with you. You can have a student join. I can't take a student on a trip with me. You could have a department come to a fair for a little bit. I've had my College of Engineering join for a 15-minute block of a fair because they can't stay for the whole thing. But if I have up on my shared slide that I always have up so that there's information for students when they come in initially, that my College of Engineering will be here from this time to this time in their local time zone, students who are interested in engineering will come back at that time to hear from that person. And so pulling other people in can help make it more interesting and dynamic, and also help you not have to be the monkey the whole time and share that with someone else.
Great, and that is a really fantastic sort of transition into the next question, which is how do you get support from your department to help you be successful in these events? And like Amber mentioned, it doesn't have to be just your admissions department, so think outside of the box. What are some of the things that you guys have found really successful to bring to your virtual events that you're getting from your university departments or even wider campuses?
I mean, obviously, I'm bringing my department some. I think it's been helpful for me to ask for small pieces of time. I'm not asking them for a 3-hour fair's worth of coverage. They're busy. I know that. But if I say, hey, I have this fair, can you come for 15 minutes for this time? They're much more open and willing and able to collaborate with that. It's also been nice because our university is better at connecting virtually now than we used to be. And so we're all on the system, and I know we are. And so I can catch them more often and check up on people. I think that having a personal relationship and caring about them and their work before you just ask for stuff helps. And since I've been here and not traveling, I've been able to check up on my favorite academic advisor friends and say, hey, how are things going? And building that relationship has helped me get more support for other things that I've wanted to do.
At our institution, we've done a good job of taking extra time to have good relations with the colleges. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that is one of the number one things for students, is because they're choosing a major and then they're choosing a major based on what they see themselves doing for the rest of their lives. That's a huge investment. So being able to interact with professors or students within that same program is incredible. So we've done a good job of having good relations with the colleges, especially our most popular ones. And we've done a good job of not making sure they're not distracted on what they're doing internally and keeping focus on how important international students are to their programs. And so when we have that focus for them, it gets them engaged to wanting. So we first create that, make sure that they understand that desire that is there, that, it is important to prioritize this. And based off of that, building relations with them and having them know that we are collaborative in international missions and that we're a team, and that this is only beneficial for their programs and their numbers and what their classrooms will look like, especially at Florida International University, right? So they're invested. And now, based on that investment, we do lots of collaborative recruitment with them in the College of Business, both at the graduate and undergraduate level, College of Engineering, College of Hospitality. And so they're actually looking to us saying, which one can I join next? How can I join? Right? But that comes with the relationship building within the institutions.
Yeah, I agree with both of the panelists here. I was in a very unique situation pre-pandemic where our academic departments actually wanted to recruit. So, I didn't necessarily need it to get buy-in to really help them participate. The only issue that we had pre-pandemic is that we didn't have a budget. They might have not been the most appropriate person to represent us at a fair. But having them just kind of there for a short period of time, just to talk about their academic program is really very helpful, and that's something useful that we can provide to the student outside of our website that I found really effective. Also, our college president does pop in once in a while, to say hi to our students, especially as many of our students come from intensive English language schools. Just having her presence there, knowing that these students have never been to the U.S. before, unfamiliar with U.S. education, just having her be part of it is it's symbolic, and it just really just shows the support that we have for our international student department. And that's a big part of it too. So part of the question is, what support do you need for us to be successful? We definitely need, leadership buy-in in this, especially during this time, especially with declining enrollments across the board because of the situation that we are in. That kind of support and knowing that, hey, our numbers are not going to be as great as they are before, but we do acknowledge that your efforts are vital to at least keeping us, at afloat, I guess, is something that I really need. Another thing that I need is just extreme flexibility. I just need the flexibility to, one, if I'm doing a virtual event at 4 a.m., please don't ask me to work throughout the day. Let me take a nap in the middle of the day, those kind of things, just to make sure that, my work-life balance is pretty, is being respected. Also, some of the things that I need to be successful, I need to set boundaries too. And I really need just those who I report to really trust that I know what I'm doing. I know that's hard I've been in situations and institutions that don't have that kind of support, but in this landscape right now, that is incredibly vital. That we work together as a team and recognize that we are experts in this, and that our insight is going to be very useful and helpful in guiding them as well too, as they will make the decisions on what we purchase as well.
That's great. I love the scope of answers you guys gave there. And there's one other thing that I would just mention that we've seen, institutions be really successful at is to bring your current students to events with you as well. You can bring faculty in different departments and things, but most of you have, an international student ambassador, maybe even just a student worker in your office that you can bring and have them, like Amber said, even join for 15 minutes. That's something that prospective students really connect with. They always love the chance to hear from a student. If it's an international student, great, that's even better. But if not, even if it's just a domestic student, that's also good. It's good to have that student perspective. And then, moving on, what are some of the maybe most budget, maybe if you can each give like your top one favorite budget friendly strategy that you use for virtual student recruitment? Because I know that with so many events, it is hard to choose.
Yeah, I'll start. I have two actually. So I started this kind of strategy that I'm just going to say yes to every free event or presentation I'm asked to do, and it's actually worked. Because honestly, one of the hard parts for me too is just scheduling the time to even schedule things. So if I'm asked to do something, I most likely will do it. Actually, it's gonna for me. It's the second one is actually going to lead to the second slide, and that's social media. Social media is just it's the most important aspect of our virtual recruitment space. And I'll talk about that a little bit more and how we utilize social media for student recruitment. But definitely, social media is our budget friendly. It is ad hoc. We need it. It is vital to our operations.
I think my biggest budget friendly tip has been the collaborative things that we've done. Chris talks about how he has his group. I've worked with several different groups, usually content specific sessions that students are interested in. They can find university information on our website. And if they like what they hear in the presentation, they'll look for it. But these are things that the investment hasn't been financial, it's been time. And so as long as our office is supporting the time that it takes to properly build these sessions, to really research them, to really put together something visually, that's appealing to students and that's helpful. The cost in terms of budget has been nothing, which is fantastic. But I would say it needs to be done correctly, and the time investment is the one piece that I feel like needs to be there in order to be successful doing that.
I think efforts are broken down. And so we do have a certain percentage of our recruitment efforts, like Chris and Amber mentioned, we've all worked together in some capacity in doing these specialized events for particular institutions or a group of institutions or schools. And then there is a percentage of maybe 10% of our budget will go to new opportunities to explore, or if we haven't been able to contact one of our counterparts in other universities and their experiences, we want to be able to try new ones. But we do allow a certain percentage of that budget to be allocated to that, so that we're not just constantly doing the same things over and over again. We give opportunity, but it's just being strategic with what you have and then putting percentages to it. So we definitely want to continue to do what works and also leave some room to try new things. And then, and this is a perfect segue to the next point, is I can't tell you enough, as to Amber's point and Chris's point, students are online. That's where they are. I've learned that I can collect information as much as I want and email them. They're not in their email. They're not in their inbox. They are waking up in the morning and scrolling on TikTok or scrolling on Instagram. And so if I can have a genuine interaction with them, whether it's virtual or in person or through their counselor in any way, and I can engage them to want to continue following up by following one of our accounts, whether it's the university account or our personal office international admissions account that we have. That's great, because once a week, as long as I post once a week or twice a week, whatever amount, when they are relaxed and when they are just enjoying themselves and doing what they do, they will always get a notification about FIU. It'll always be there. And that's what I find works, because the next time they visit a fair or the next time that we do a presentation with their school, they will be engaged. They'll know, oh, FIU, I've seen a few posts about their, research or their fun student activities. And it's more than just application, cost. It's more about the lifestyle they're going to have.
Yeah, you're so right, Sophia. We're always asking, why didn't the student see this? I sent it to them on email. Why didn't they read their email? Well, it's because they're on social media. Unfortunately, we are running a little bit short on time. So if we can we have 3 more questions to get through, panelists. So if you can give your quick answer of how do you utilize social media for student recruitment?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So, yeah, so you know how you say that students are online? Well, I'm online. I'm constantly on social media. So I'm one of those types of people. So many different ways. So social media has actually been very helpful for me getting information on recruitment events. So I'm constantly on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram to see what is out there, to see what we can sign up for, especially if there are free events. It is a rat race to who signs up first oftentimes. So that's why I utilize social media. I also utilize social media to connect with counselors. So through various Facebook groups, I think, and also I use social media to connect with our students. And one thing that I really do use, I share stories from students. So if there's anything that students are posting about my institution, I don't have to really create anything. All I have to do is click a share button, and it's going to be shared on our social media platforms. But there's many different ways that you can utilize social media. I know it doesn't resonate with everybody, and I know it can be intimidating. So my number one tip, if you're going to approach social media, just go with the one that you like the most. Okay, don't force yourself to do TikTok if you're not really into that, or Instagram if you're into that. Just go with the one that resonates with you the most, and just do it to the best of your ability.
I can be short. I'm going to say social media and recruitment is not our strong point as a university. We don't have like an office account. I don't have one that I use publicly with students. And so definitely something we could grow in. We do have a university level one. And I think that what they've decided at the university level is they want to focus that message and do a few accounts very well versus every office has one or counselors have one and then they fall off. Because if you don't carefully manage social media and you're not feeding the beast constantly, it can actually hurt you as much as help you. And so that would be an area where maybe that's not our strongest piece, but we take a very different approach.
And to my point before, essentially, students wanted to engage. There was a demand for it so much that our office felt that we needed to create a platform. In this instance, it was our International Admissions Instagram, because students wanted to connect. They actually wanted to connect with the admission counselors when we were visiting them. And so we created this platform for them to engage and to see what we're doing on campus, sharing, as Chris says, with whatever students are doing on campus as well. And it really resonated. So anytime we are virtually meeting with them or in person, we have a QR code that they can kind of scan. It leads them to our accounts and they can follow which ones they want. And we'll do little special prizes for them or anything like that to keep them engaged.
Great, thank you. Now here's the great question that everybody always wants to know. What has not worked? What is like one thing that you tried and just didn't work, not worth your time, and maybe why? I know that's a lot, but keep it short. Because different things work differently for different institutions, and that's the important thing to remember.
There have been a few fairs that we went to that were just not great at all, and they were rough, but we shared feedback with colleagues and we talked to others about their experience. We learned and made sure it wasn't something we were doing, it was something that was maybe overall. And so we have gravitated away from some of those more recently. But we're also open and watching for when those fairs change and update what they're doing and how they're approaching things, because that can absolutely change how helpful it is for us moving forward.
I will say that when lockdown happened and all these virtual options came up, our initial reaction was say yes to everything. Be present at all times. And that did not work. And it in different levels. So boundaries, we talked about that. We also talked about strategy. Fortunately, in saying yes to a lot of things, we realized, like what Amber mentioned, some things don't work and we don't have to revisit those things. But ultimately, a little bit of research prior can save money, can save time, can save energy. So now what we do is, we do our best to do our research, contact other institutions that might have more information, but we definitely don't say yes to everything anymore. We're just much more strategic.
I guess for what really hasn't worked for me, I'm going to talk about approach actually instead of the actual events. What typically doesn't work is that expectation or setting that expectation that I'm going to see a lot of students at a virtual fair. That's just not the case for an institution like mine. But what has worked is just the constant engagement afterwards, and actually dedicating your time to that one student who does stop by that shows genuine interest in your institution. And it's like that also in person, but I think more so in virtual, there's this expectation that just because it's virtual, you're going to have a lot more students coming to your booth, but I can't set that expectation. That doesn't work for me. So having a really good follow-up communication plan is very, very helpful. But yeah, setting that expectation that I'm going to have a lot of students flooding into my booth does not work.
Great. And then the last question, what are some of the lessons you've learned? So maybe one lesson that you learned over this past year and a half of virtual recruitment.
I think that we as a team have learned that each person on our team has different skill sets, and that's a strength. We don't need to force everyone to be great at college fairs. We have some people who are great at the fairs, other people who are great at the outreach, some people who are awesome at the marketing, and a team needs to have a diverse group of people. And so instead of having people manage their territory, having everybody help in the areas where they have strengths has been really helpful, and it's something we continue to need to revisit and remember throughout the year.
I'm going to add to Amber's point how true that is. And the benefits of virtual is, as opposed to going to a country or doing visits in person, where your real only resource is yourself at times, and making do and being a jack of all trades, virtual allows for so many more opportunities, whether it's working with faculty in the colleges, whether it's working with a student volunteer, whether it's following up through social media platforms, right? All the things that we've been discussing encompassed. And it's we're in what feels like, the pandemic is still going on, but when we started this virtual, it's here to stay. That's what I've learned, and so we need to find a way to make it a hybrid in some element, because we do miss the in-person interactions. We are human, and that is important, but also the cost and the reward of virtual, it is pivotal for institutions to learn to work with it, because in the long run, once you manage it, it's going to be so helpful.
The one lesson that I learned in virtual, or just being in this whole situation, is that I didn't take enough time to really focus in this space. And I think it's really important that I do that and have a comprehensive, diverse portfolio of ways that we're outreaching to students. Not necessarily just selling my institution, but also providing very important information about college admissions, really guiding students, counseling students. Those are some of the things too, and it really just gave me an opportunity to be creative. I consider myself a creative, actually, so this really just gave me a space to really just go for it and just think outside of the box as much as I can. But yeah, I think one lesson that I learned is that this gave me a lot of time for self-reflection, reflection on how we were recruiting before, and strategies on how we can move forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just, as a final thing, we have just a couple of tips. I'll go first. My favorite tip for virtual events is to show your face. And again, just treat this like you would an in-person fair. It doesn't matter if you rolled out of bed 1 minute before the fair started or 3 hours before the fair started, but you need to look and act like you rolled out of bed 3 hours before the fair started. So just bring that same level of enthusiasm. Make sure you're dressed, make sure that everything looks good around you. And again, show your face. Interact as a person and not just as a faceless institution or a chatbot. Sofia?
We're going to bring it home with make it a team affair. If you're like Chris, who's one person recruitment office, right? Or if we're fortunate that we have a group of people in our team. And to Amber's point, the truth is that we've divided and conquered in ways that beforehand was territories and regions, and now it's skill sets and what we can bring to the table and what will be beneficial. So whether it's within your own office, whether it's collaborative with another office, or whether your team is certain tools and resources and platforms that we discussed, make sure that it's not just you, because you can't do it all.
I think you can't do it all goes really nicely into my leaving tip. I think most people, basically everyone that I've talked to over the last year, has been experiencing some level of burnout, overwork. The boundaries are gone. When you work from home, all of a sudden home and work, they kind of get mixed, and time is really, what is time if you can't go out anyway? Make sure you're taking care of yourself. And that might be blocking time on your calendar to work on emails, or having a day where you've blocked yourself as invisible so that you can catch up on things, or just taking time off, even if you can't leave. Like, we all need to do better at taking care of ourselves through this, because we really can't give to our students and help them achieve if we aren't also in a good place ourselves. And so say no to things. I give you permission. Block some time and enjoy pieces of this as you go through, because I know like I've loved doing this panel because I got to catch up with Sofia and Chris and Kate. And so I wish experiences like that for all of you.
My tip is be creative and personalize your virtual recruitment. I think there's just such an endless and infinite opportunities in virtual recruitment. And I think, in an in-person event, you're kind of just restricted to your table, but with the virtual space, there's so many stories out there. And I don't consider myself a recruiter. I'm just a storyteller. I'm a storyteller of student experiences and storyteller of what our faculty and our staff and everybody on campus is trying to accomplish. And all of those stories are virtual. So, take all of that, bring it all in so that way you can convey that message to the students. But yeah, be creative, personalize your virtual recruitment, think of it as an opportunity, and you'll be really surprised what is out there that you can really utilize to really amplify your institution.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Hopefully IC3 will maybe forgive us for not leaving adequate time for questions. However, the good news is that I know that our session is the last one before networking. So at least we're not making anybody late if you want to stay and ask a question. And also we've been able to get through a lot of questions in the chat. So that is great. But if anybody else has any other questions, we would love to chat more. Anybody in either the virtual or in-person audience?
Is there any question?
We can see you all in that session room. We can see you on the camera.
Thanks for coming, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for coming, but don't be shy.
Jim,
actually,
Kate,
extra
hi.
for the people in person because it's just a panel of all virtual people. Yes, Arti?
Just a quick heads up, these people have gone through so many sessions during the day here in India. I think it's maybe that effect, but I think it was an insightful session. If there's any question that we can take from the virtual audience, that'll be great. Or else we can just end it here.
Yeah, I see. If anybody has, I don't see Sheetal here anymore, but yeah, Sheetal, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question.
I know my question is really just about the exhaustion. I think that we're all feeling right now, and just to kind of get the feedback, like, I don't know, from the counselors or from the panelists or anybody, if you really found that, just kind of what is that moment of least exhaustion that we should be coming in and talking to people and asking for their time. Because I think, it was funny, and this came up because of your question at the very beginning. I understand I have to do the virtual world, and I'm happy to do it, but I'm in DC right now, so I've been up since 12:30, and you asked me the question where I've just done, right? And so I don't want to do anything virtual anymore today for sure. So I don't know if you guys have found that formula. When can we do things that are exhausting for students and counselors?
I will happily jump in on this. I have big beef with the idea of the recruitment cycle in this modern era, because previously we used to travel August, September, October, and that was the main outreach time. And a lot of people are still doing that, but I have bad news for everybody. That doesn't matter anymore. It's utterly pointless. It's just when counselors are getting the most emails. I have the most success in my outreach sessions that I do in May, June, July. I'll get 80% attendance at a session if I do it in May. The same session in August, I'm down to 50%. And so the further into the school year it gets, the worse your attendance is going to be. And we have to start opening things up to non-12 year students. The outreach we do now with 9th, 10th, 11th grade, that actually stays with them for years. They'll remember us. And so that actually means that we have a 12-month recruitment cycle. And while there's some things that we have to consider, so for example, many of us read applications, I just can't, like physically and mentally, I cannot do sessions in December, January, February, not possible. March, it's really sketchy because I have a lot of admitted student stuff happening. But do I take vacations in July anymore? No, I did sessions multiple times a week in July, and they were my most successful sessions, and I just kind of plan on that. And so I think everybody needs to kind of shake themselves out of the traditional idea of the recruitment cycle because it just doesn't exist anymore.
Great.
There's a point that Amber. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention there was a point that Amber mentioned that was critical for my team, and it's expanding past 12th grade. We have been doing this at FIU forever and we continue to, especially now, because we still actually, for freshmen, require or request the SAT or ACT. So the sooner that our applicants can know about that, and the sooner that we can inform them of that and show them the resources they have to prepare or notify their counselor, the better for us. And so when they are in 10th or 11th grade and they do know that and they are interested in a particular school, they can start putting the legwork in prior, because then 12th grade comes and they're juggling a lot at this time, especially in this, modern day that we're living. So we really open up to all grades, and we just try to be in front of them as much as possible.
In my institution, we serve a large number of non-traditional students. So these are students not coming from high schools. So we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to be constantly, outreaching to different populations of students. But yeah, I hear you. I've been putting off my vacation time for the longest time. I'm originally from Hawaii, so I've never gone home for two years. I'm gonna go home next month. Hopefully things work out. I'm still trying to think that's even a good time to go. But I don't think there's ever going to be a good time to go. So I just really have to just say, hey, turn it off right now. You need to get some rest. But yeah. But I do agree with Amber. We have to think outside of the traditional recruitment cycle. It just doesn't work anymore. Just because students are in different parts of, their application process and their college search. And, there's also a lot of students who are getting information for the first time too. So yeah.
And I see Dolan, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, right. I don't know if this has been addressed in the session. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. This point about, I don't know whether you collect some, contact information from the students in the virtual fairs that you attend, or even in a school session or whatever. Do you, if you are collecting, are there any challenges? Do the students fill the forms up? Do you get to collect a decent amount of leads, in the sense that, let's say you are actually talking to, 40, 50 students. However, the number of students who actually fill up the forms would be about 10 or 12. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, especially if follow-up is important for you and your institution, and it should be for everybody. There's no one touch point and your recruitment is done. You have to keep following up with students. And I think that it's critical to, before you decide to do a virtual event, find out about that. Ask those questions. Say, am I going to get, the data? What kind of data do you usually get? It's fine to ask those things. And we unfortunately didn't have enough time to get too deeply into this during our panel. But one thing that I think is really important is to personalize your follow-up. Do not just send blanket, thank you for meeting me. Here's, my admissions website. You need to I know it's more work, but make notes about what conversations you had with what students, what event did you meet them at. Any sort of personalization you can do with the follow-up really helps, I think.
Hi, this is Devish from the physical audience here in the venue. First of all, fantastic session. Thank you for sharing all the insights. I have one quick question, and that is, when a lot of you get a lot of opportunities to present in different platforms, right? What are some of the things that you look at, and what are some of the red flags that you see, and sort of see that this might not be the right event for us, or this might not be the right virtual engagement for us?
Just this week, I got an invitation for something. It's going to be the biggest fair in the region, apparently, ever. and I did some work. I was like, I've never heard of this, so that's strange because if it's in one of my territories, I've usually heard of the big players. And so I looked them up online, and they got 5 out of 5 stars almost on Google, which is also a big red flag, right? That never happens. And so I looked at the reviews. They're spaced very closely apart. They are in the exact same format for all of them. And hidden among all these 5 stars, this is amazing, are a couple that say, I had to fill out a review while I was sitting in the office for this group in order to get services. And so sometimes like a little bit of legwork on something that you're like, this might be odd, is worth it because this was a free event. But when I looked into it, do I really want to associate myself with something that's requiring people to put in information in order to get services from them? No, probably not. I've also found a lot of luck in the social media groups for counselors. So Globetrotters United is awesome. And while a lot of times we won't give super specific feedback, nobody wants to burn bridges. We will give feedback and share. And there's a lot of one-on-one conversations that happen outside of the larger group posts to share about this was a successful event for me, this one wasn't, and this is why. It's important to keep in mind that just because something wasn't successful for me doesn't mean it won't be successful for you, because even in the same market, we all have very different positions and places and brands. And so it would be important to consider that your position in this market might be different than mine, and you may have a very different experience.
Amber, we didn't know you moonlighted as a personal investigator. This is great to know.
You have to be. If you're signing up for these fairs, you are associating your university and giving validity to these brands. And so if you are not doing your homework, you are doing a disservice to yourself and your students and your university. It's a lot of pressure.
If I could add to that, I would say get together with your team and to come up with a list of questions to vet that vendor before you schedule a meeting with them. So just to give an example of some of those questions, what is the case for this particular country or this particular region if you're recruiting from a university side? Do we, if that's not already part of your recruitment plan, what do you want to add it? Why? Good questions to ask a vendor are how is student information handled? How are they recording student information? Can they give you an example of what that would look like? It could just be one name, it could be fake name, but just to see the different fields that they collect. Are these students just from that event, or is this from a database of all the students they've ever had ever? So, that tells you a little bit about quality. Will the presentation be recorded on that platform? Questions about accessibility, not only for the university side, but also for the high school side. Once it's done, can students still go into that platform? I think there was a question in the chat about, how do we get through that wall of university representatives? Well, it's a lot easier for students to visit more booths when they're open for a longer time. And that does happen with some vendors where you can, there's a period of time where you can interact with a counselor, but then there's also a period of time where the booths remain open, students can explore them, and they can download materials. So that's a good question to ask, does your booth remain open? Can I have materials on there? Can I have videos on there? How long will students have access to it? Also, what Amber had said, checking with your networks. Have you heard about this person? Has anybody used this person? And oftentimes reputable fair providers will offer a list of other universities that they've worked with or other schools that they've worked with in the past. So you can always reach out and say, hey, I saw you were listed on their website. What did you think? Yeah, so that would be my recommendations for, having just a sheet, an Excel spreadsheet or whatever you need to organize those questions to help you vet a vendor.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for all of your time. I know we went way over. Sorry, Arti. And I know it's also general networking time. So what I'm going to do, in case anybody still wants to talk, is I'm going to go on the platform and create a group room for virtual student recruitment if anybody else wants to keep talking about it. Otherwise, please, everybody, if you could fill out the session feedback form on the app, that would be fantastic. But I just wanted to thank IC3 for hosting our session, and thank you especially in the in-person audience for coming to sit in a room and stare at a screen and experience your own Zoom fatigue, even though you're in an in-person conference. So thank you so much.